It is 7:35 p.m. I am calling this meeting to order. Thank you all for being here. With that, we will move into the call of the roll. Will our clerk pro tem call the roll?
Yes, okay. There it is. Wait. One sec, let me just pull up the voting record. There we go. All right, Senator Bennett. Senator Bennett. Senator Hagen. Here. Okay, Senator Hendricks.
Here.
Senator Henson.
Here.
Senator Morinville. Senator Morinville. Senator Nguyen Khan.
Here.
Senator Nguyen. Senator Nguyen. Okay. Senator Ofei.
Here.
Senator Parapali. Senator Parapali. Senator Pierce. Senator Pierce. Senator Womble. Senator Womble. Speaker Gary.
Here.
Senator Kim.
Here.
Senator Stanton.
Here.
I am here. Senator Guskowitz is here. Senator Jones.
Here.
Senator Vernon.
Here.
Senator Wilson.
Here.
Senator Brandon.
Here.
Senator Chair Grimm.
Here.
Senator Manna. Senator Manna. Senator McDermott. Senator McDermott. Senator Nanduri. Senator Nanduri. Senator Smith. Senator Smith. Senator Sodano. Senator Sodano. Senator Flynn. Senator Flynn. Okay. Senator Langley. Senator Langley. Senator Longo.
Here.
Senator Aurora. Senator Aurora. Senator Erdl. Senator Jessup. Senator Jessup. Chair McClanahan. Chair McClanahan. Yes. Okay. Senator Palakuri.
Here.
Senator Schneider.
Here.
Chair Vespucci. Chair Vespucci. Senator Adams. Senator Adams. No. Chair Baruch.
Present.
Senator Jane. Senator Jane. Senator Leonard.
Here.
Yes. Senator Pollock.
Present.
Yes. And Senator Alexander.
Here.
All right. Okay. It appears we do have a quorum. Good there.
Great, thank you very much. Seeing as we have quorum, we'll move on to the next item of business, which is approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to postpone the reading of the minutes?
So moved.
So moved.
So moved until the next regular meeting of the undergraduate senate.
There's a motion to postpone to the next meeting, and I heard a second from Senator Vernon. And without objection, we will postpone the consideration of those minutes until the next meeting, which will be in June. With that, we'll move into reports, and we'll move into receipt of petitions and messages, starting with reports of the Office of the Senate. I will begin with my report. So I'll try and keep it brief. But there's a lot that has happened in just the past few weeks. I'll start with just providing the link to an open letter that I and a few other senators signed on to regarding a bill in the North Carolina General Assembly. Let's see, the letter is linked on the agenda and the minutes, but I'll send it in the chat as well. Basically, there was a bill that was being considered that would have basically made it impossible for us to fund most types of student organizations, as it banned us from funding. It would have banned the university or anyone distributing university funds from funding organizations that engage in political or religious programming, as well as any kind of fraternity or sorority organizations. So I and a few others signed on to an open letter sent to the General Assembly saying to not pass this legislation. The bill was not heard in committee, and it missed the crossover date, which means it's not going to be considered this session most likely, but I will provide y'all updates on that if anything comes up regarding that again. The only other major updates I'm going to share is I have been working with the university archivist to transfer over a lot of our old records. As if you've poked around the student government offices or the Senate Drive, you'll see there are records going back at least 5 years. And in terms of physical records, we have records going back to like the early 2000s, just kind of stuffed in my office. And so we're going to try and get those transferred over to the archives this fall and hopefully free up some space there. I also worked with the OAs to get placards made for everyone. So in our in-person meetings in the fall, you'll all have placards with your name and a guide to Robert's Rules on the back. And if you're a member of Senate leadership, so committee chairs, et cetera, you'll have a name tag that got made up as well. Those are currently in my office. So if you have so unfortunately, you won't really get access to those until the fall either. I think those are the major updates from me, but I'll take any questions. If there are no questions, I'll recognize this. Let's see, the Speaker Pro Tem is not present, neither is the Finance Chair, so I will recognize the Rules and Judiciary Chair for their report.
Thank you. The R&J committee met a few days ago to consider a couple nominees. Everyone who showed up was reported favorably. They were good candidates. So we'll be considering a couple more nominees in General Orders calendar this evening. Furthermore, I finally want to address the code test. At this point, we are past the deadline for senators to complete the code test. So luckily, no R&J members failed to complete the code test, but several senators who are not on R&J failed to complete the code test. What this means is that that your voting rights on legislation that amends the code is suspended. To get that back, all you need to do is just pass the code test with a 90% margin within 6 weeks of Monday. I will pull up the code test status. So Senators Morinville, Parapali, Ellis, McDermott, Nandori, Smith, Aurora, Ertl, Palikuri, and Vespute, you need to go do the code test within 6 weeks of Monday. That's all. Any queries?
If you could just send me that list and I'll note that on the attendance sheet.
It's in the R&J folder called code test status.
Thank you. If there are no other questions for the R&J chair, I will recognize our Oversight and Advocacy chair for their report.
Okay, so we haven't met yet over the summer, but I'm gonna send out a when to meet in the group me I sent out. So if you haven't joined that yet, send I mean, that's in my last email, so join that. And we'll probably meet in the next week or two. So I'll send out that when to meet tonight.
Are there any questions for the O&A chair? All right, seeing no questions, we'll go to the report from our ethics chair.
Hello, everyone. Not much to talk about here. We've not had a meeting since everyone's ethics disclosures were due. I am very pleased to report that everyone except for one senator managed to submit their ethics disclosures. What that means is I will be starting an ethics action against said senator. I'm going to be scheduling a meeting of the ethics committee probably at some point next week. So if you're on the committee, watch out for an email. We'll look for when to meet and figure out a best time. But otherwise, yeah, I'm going to be creating a Google form going forwards for attendance. So I'll send that out to everyone as well as the chairs so that they can, the chairs and the speakers, so they can send it out in all their emails regarding meetings. But, you know, as always, please make sure to let me know if you're going to miss a meeting. Yeah, I'll take any questions.
If there are no questions for our ethics chair, we'll move to a report from our joint governance council member at large.
Hello, everybody. I'm going to speak quickly because my internet is bad. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Excellent. So, the CAA for the we agreed Twitter or trustees or basically build for next time. Be an audit committee. I'll talk about
You're breaking up a lot. Not sure if you saw my chat about it. Okay, let's see. Okay, I will ask him to send like a type up version of his report just to cover the highlights there. See, with that, we'll go to our members of the Commission on Campus Equality and Student Equity. We'll start with, let's see, we'll go with, let's see, Senator Alexander first, as Senator Vernon is just going to be typing her report in the chat.
Yeah, hi. There's really not much work we have done. I spoke with Senator Vernon before. We are trying to get to discuss a bit more over the summer. Other than that, our work is really just, yeah, like Senator Vernon said, it's going to be focused on the fall semester, but we're happy to speak with anyone if they'd like to about our work later on. Thank you.
Are there any questions? All right, seeing no questions, we will go into our reports from the executive branch, starting with our report from the USG president, who has informed me he could not attend today, and I believe we'll be hearing from the executive manager.
Hey, thank you, Speaker Gary. So Chris just wants to first and foremost apologize that he couldn't be here, and he hopes that you're starting off your summer great. Besides that, what's going on right now is that President Everett is working with the Chief of Staff to on the next round of applications for executive positions. And another thing that he wanted to add is that he is really excited and hoping that today you all will codify the co-director model for the cabinet positions. Besides that, he's also preparing for the Board of Trustees meeting this week. And lastly, he just wants to thank y'all for your leadership, and he looks forward to be able to join y'all next meeting. Thank you so much.
Does anyone have any questions?
Do have one question.
Yes, you are recognized.
Since the president is handling applications, do you expect there's going to be any more nominations before the next Senate meeting, or is this for executive branch internal positions?
This is for the internal positions.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question.
Are there any further questions? All right, seeing none, thank you. We'll move on to our report from the USG Vice President.
Hi, everyone. I hope you guys are doing well. Since we last met, the Hardship Committee convened for the first time, or that might have been before the last Senate meeting. But the grad representative and myself were also able to meet with parking and transportation to speak a little bit more about what the process is going to look like. We're really excited to use some of the advice that was given to us by Matthew Tweeden, who oversaw this process last year, to adopt a rolling procedure for applications. So we're able to process hardship applications a little bit more quickly and a little bit more efficiently. So once we have that information and the timeline for you all, I'll definitely share it on the listserv for anyone who's interested in putting their name into either the lottery or the hardship process. As Chair McClanahan shared earlier, R&J heard a series of nominations from President Everett. The folks that were able to show up are reported favorably, and I'm pretty sure everybody else is here tonight. So they'll be able to speak a little bit more to their experience and to their goals for the various positions that they've been appointed to. I'm personally very excited and very grateful to Chair McClanahan and the entire selection committees that we are able to put forward a nomination for the Student Supreme Court and for the Board of Elections. I think that's a high priority vacancy that we really need to get filled. So I'm really excited for you all to hear a little bit more from those folks during tonight's meeting. And I got to go to meet with R&J, and that was my first time going to a committee meeting in my position. So that was exciting. I am meeting with the provost in person next week to discuss goals for the year. So if anybody has anything, any topics that they think might be helpful for me to bring up with the provost, please feel free to reach out and let me know. I would love to bring some of those topics with me just so I could speak a little bit more to what Senate is doing and generally what students are interested in. And then the last thing that I just wanted to share with you all, the overall external appointment application is on Heal Life, but not formally open right now. So it's my hope to be able to open up that application portal at some point in the next 2 weeks so that folks can apply over the summer. And then my guess is we'll have a second big push early on in the fall so that we can get first years interested and also reach out to students a little bit more once they're on campus. And Chair McClanahan, to your question about whether or not there would be more nominees on the external side, my thought is yes, particularly with O&A. There are a handful of positions that President Everett has confirmed and would like to nominate that will be rolling over from last year. So my hope is to have all of that legislation to you all for next Senate meeting to hopefully get some more folks confirmed. Those were all the points I wanted to hit, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions for the Vice President? And I will also note that our member at large has posted their report in the chat. All right, if there are no questions, we'll move on to our next report, which is from the USG Chief of Staff.
Hello, everyone. I hope you all are doing well this summer and don't have any sickness like I have to start off well for you guys. But just wanted to give a brief report. We are in the thick of application season. I've worked closely with the undergraduate student government secretary and the rest of the executive branch officers to put a lot of social media campaigning out there. So I think that looks well. And we're seeing a lot of responses so far, and a lot of emailing that I've done and Instagram responses that I've done. So people are seeing those positions out there for cabinet and senior staff. And I think we'll see a good turnout when the application window closes on the 23rd. Outside of that, working with a lot of different offices, spoke a lot with Treasurer Grodsky over these past few weeks and working to speak with other offices just to get a sense of where they are and sort of inform planning and whatnot that's going on as we prepare to soon present a budget when that comes about. So excited about that, and have been in conversation with Dean of Students, Dean Rickenberg, specifically about Chris Everett's policy on financial literacy and basic needs, and looking to have another meeting with her over the summer. So if any of you have anything that you wanted to put forward, just reach out to me, and I can make sure to bring that up in the meeting as well. But if there's any questions, please feel free to ask.
Are there any questions for the Chief of Staff? Seeing none, thank you. And I made a small error and skipped over the treasurer's report. It's completely my bad. So we will recognize the USG treasurer for their report. Logan, do you want me to pull up the slides on my computer, or you can also
give me the access? I think that'd just be easier in the long
Yeah.
run.
All right, you should have share privileges.
Okay, just give me a sec. Oh, I don't really understand how this works. Give me a second. Might be. Yeah. Are you all able to see a presentation? Yeah, you should be able to.
Yeah, we can see it.
Great. Okay. Yeah, so I'm just gonna start off with let me actually, while I'm just on this slide, I'm going to go through a pretty thorough analysis of the FY23 expenditure figures, which are mostly complete with the semester elapsed, although there's a few organizations which have been given extensions on expenditures. So we won't know the final numbers probably until around the turnover of the fiscal year, but these should be pretty accurate to what we'll ultimately have. Before I get into that, I'll just kind of touch on some of my other duties. In terms of SFAC, I've begun to schedule some preliminary meetings ahead of fall fee review with a number of fee receiving units. That includes Student Legal Services. I'll be meeting with Fran Muse, Director of Student Legal Services, on Thursday. I'm also in the process of trying to set up a meeting with the relevant individuals from the Carolina Union. So that's ongoing. In general, I've been trying to reach out to graduate students to try and establish some coordination, both on fee review and some other issues. I've been a little bit frustrated with this so far, but I will continue trying to reach out because it is important that we coordinate in TFAD and SFAS. So I'll keep you all updated on that. Other than that, I've been meeting with a few individuals regarding the food insecurity issue. I think I met with Senator Alexander regarding that. And I will also be meeting at some point relatively soon with the relevant with some people in finance and operations regarding that. Yeah, I'm also going to try to meet soon to start planning for the fall budget cycle. That will first include relevant Senate leadership, including Speaker Gary, Finance Chair Vispute, just to sort of set the timeline for that cycle, because we're a little bit behind the codified schedule on that. So we're going to try and make sure that we have a time frame for that within the next few weeks. And then after that, I want to start conversations with the relevant individuals in Student Life and Leadership and the Carolina Union to decide on what our appropriations reserve is going to be. My intention is to set it at the maximum permissible by law, which would be 80% of the general reserve, which I think is probably going to be, which is going to grow, as I'm about to tell you. So try and spend money as expeditiously as possible is my goal. We'll see if they let us. Yeah, I will, and I'll also try to include the finance chair in that process. Are there any questions on that before I launch into the expenditures presentation? Seeing none, I'm just going to go ahead and we can always come back to it. Yeah, so we have these figures. They're kind of a mixed bag, in my opinion. I'll say up front. I'm going to try and do a lot of the analysis comparing it to the prior year to see how we've improved, and I'll also try and give some takeaways on how we can continue to improve. So that is the total amount of funding that the Senate ultimately appropriated to student organizations in this fiscal year. And all of this data comes from the controller's log. It's possible there's some other source of data that I don't have access to, but this is, in my opinion, the most reputable official source. So a little just short of $1 million. This is a little bit surprising to me only because they had about access to about 1.1, $1.2 million, and weren't quite able to get to the 1 million number. But it's far more than has ever in the history of the undergraduate student government been spent. It's about 60,000 more than was spent previously. It's quite a bit of money, as you can see. We also had this was how much was ultimately spent out of that, and that's also higher than last year, but not by that much. For context, my goal was to spend at least $600,000 this fiscal year, and we're going to be short of that. $600,000 would be about $100,000 deficit, and at that rate we would be able to spend down the reserve in about 10 years, which is still too slow, but it was I figured a reasonable minimum goal. But we were short of that still, so this is going to add about $60,000 onto the reserve. It's about a $60,000 surplus. Unfortunately, there are a lot of the same issues that I think I've touched on with y'all before continued. So continuing to grapple with that. So ultimately that's an expenditure rate of 44.35%. And this is going to rise a little bit. I don't know by how much. It's not that much higher than last year's. This is unfortunate to me. I did try to take some, not much structurally changed compared to last year. I did try to take some measures to make it easier just to do line item changes, for example, but not much really structurally changed from last year, which is why I think the number is pretty comparable. For context, I was told by the student government advisor at the beginning of the year that I could not give such a the large budget I wanted to give, which was supposed to be about $1.5 million, because there was going to be a 70% rate of reimbursement. And the business office could, according to him at the times, only process about $800,000 of reimbursements in a fiscal year. So, and that was, he promised a 70% rate of reimbursement, just not even close. It was almost exactly what it was last year. So that was very disappointing. But then kind of looking under the hood, we can talk at some level about the median participating organization. So this was the median organization actually received less than they did last year, just by a little bit. We had a substantially larger budget, but we had far more organizations participating. So far more organizations participating meant that ultimately the total amount we could give out to them was somewhat smaller. And I think the mean number is a little bit higher, but that's skewed because some organizations, particularly, for example, executive branch, receive far more than that. So that the mean is skewed, but this is the median figure that was ultimately appropriated. This is the median figure that was ultimately spent by this is the figure that was ultimately spent by the median participating organization. And this is interesting because this is quite a bit higher than it was last year. It's about almost twice as large. So that is promising in a lot of ways. And then if you look at it, we've more than doubled the median rate of expenditure. So this kind of gives this is a little bit promising in terms of what the median organization was able to do and was able to spend. And that's also kind of represented by this number, which tells me that a lower percentage of organizations didn't spend any of their funds, despite more organizations participating. So that's kind of I think that's a meaningful number only in that I think it kind of represents accessibility of the process and engagement with the process. So that's encouraging as well. In terms of takeaways, we could have handled a larger budget. I'm going to fight for a larger budget. I don't really know why they can only spend $800,000. That makes no sense to me. I'm going to try and fight for an answer on that as well. But at the very least, I'm going to be quite insistent that we need to maximize our budget, because we're not spending what we need to spend in order to spend down this reserve. So we only increased both appropriations and expenditures somewhat. I don't know why that is. It's a little bit confusing to me, actually. I don't know why the total amount of money was less than that was appropriated was less than could have been appropriated. I'm going to do some investigation, I think, with Speaker Pro Tem Ertl about that. Yeah, and our expenditure rate is not really increased significantly, so that's concerning. I'm hopeful that the full-time controller will better be able to facilitate a more reimbursements and help organizations spend money up front, but I'm not sure. This is to be investigated. And then there's also signs of improvement in terms of accessibility. We had a lot more organizations requesting money, but they were spending the median organization was spending a bigger pot. So what that also tells me is that if the median organization is spending more, but overall organizations aren't spending more, that skew is meaningful, and organizations which are receiving more money aren't spending more money. And I'm going to get to one specific type of organization that I'd like to bring to your attention. And yeah, fewer organizations spent no money at all. So that barrier to entry seems to have fallen. In terms of student government budgets, this is something I've been thinking about. So the executive branch received in non-stipend funds a little over $27,000. They only spent less than $4,000. This was a rate of expenditure which was lower than the median rate of expenditure. And this is despite executive branch receiving far more money than any other student organization. Like $7,000 more than the next closest organization. The Senate received a little less than $6,000 in nine stipend funds. You all spent $40. Obviously quite diminutive. It's actually in the second quartile though, because the first quartile is $0, consider. So y'all at least spent some money. Honor system spent a good amount. Supreme Court spent nothing from what they were given. I think this justifies, again, the elimination of the branch budget cycle. I think this has been nothing but a disaster. It has been a sink of unspent funds. And you will have the opportunity to approve branch budgets again. What I would urge you is to think very carefully before writing such large checks, and to treat them as regular organizations, because they're not spending money at a particularly prodigious rate. So I would call it unadvisable that much more money be given to them, because I don't think they have been I don't think any of the branches have been particularly responsible stewards of student fee funds. So just kind of for the overview on fiscal year 23, and for record purposes, I have the 22 numbers on the next slide, but yeah. The quartiles are kind of interesting. There's a skew from the mean, which tells me that this is something of an unequal process. There's some organizations receiving a lot more money than others. And if you look at the mean and the median, I'll also note, like, the median is much lower than the mean, so some are also spending much more than others. So think about that as we move into the next cycle. This is just fiscal year 22 for comparison and for future use. Yeah, I'll take questions on this if there are any. I'm actually just going to stop sharing, I think. That'd be best. I'm not seeing any. If anyone does have follow-up that they'd like to make, please let me know. I'm also going to make sure. I think I sent this to, I don't know if I've sent this to Chair Vespute, obviously relevant to him, so I'm going to try and make sure this gets in his hands.
If I may add, this is linked on the agenda.
There's also a copy of it in the Senate drive for anyone who wants to access it. So if there are no other questions, or any questions really, I will move to the report from the USG Director of State and External Affairs.
Good evening.
me to keep this brief.
I'm not sure if you're still trying to talk, but
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just saying I have no updates at this time.
okay.
I'm still working on formulating the office. Hopefully I'll have more updates from the office in June. Sorry about breaking up. Thank you, Becca, for letting me know. Otherwise, I would have been totally clueless. Thank you.
All right. Well, I guess, are there any questions? If not, we'll move on to our report from the Student Attorney General.
Hi, thank you, Andrew. Yeah, let me just pull up my numbers. Okay, we have currently 22 cases in the waiting to be heard stage. We also have 40 cases pending charges and expecting quite a bit more. So having quite a busy time right now, but yeah, that's about everything. If any of you have any questions, I think.
Are there any questions for the undergraduate student attorney general? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to our report from the undergraduate honor court chair.
Hi, good evening all. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah. Good evening, honorable members of the 106th. My report. So since I took over this position on April 11th, I have overseen 8 cases. Yes, 8 cases, 4 not guilty cases, 1 expedited hearing procedure, and 3 honor court alternative resolutions. Yeah, all of those cases were successful, went off without a hitch. Nothing else to add. Do you have any questions for me?
If there are no questions, we'll go to our report from the honor court outreach coordinator. I don't believe that she is present. So you'll move to the report of the student government advisor, who is also not present. There are no papers addressed to the Senate, and no senators stated their intention to give a 2-minute speech. So we will now move into public comment period. At this time, if you are here for public comment, just raise your hand and I will recognize y'all. Just as a reminder, for public comments, you are given 2 minutes to speak. And for senators, you are not allowed to engage in conversation with people giving public comment. So with that, Neil, I'll recognize you for your 2 minutes.
Right. Thank you so much. So my name is Neil Sharma, and I previously served in the Department of Academic Affairs in the Vann administration. I would like to briefly talk about USB 105018, strictly speaking, in favor of that particular piece of legislation. So I wanted to take a moment to briefly talk about my experience leading with a co-director and why I still see value in having 2 leaders for each cabinet department. Last year was the first time I served in student government at Carolina, and I don't think I could have done it without the support of my co-directors. Initially Zainab and later Ryan Smith. During that time, we co-led several student-focused events, like 2 popular career-building events that featured almost 200 students, as well as conducted policy discussions with numerous UNC stakeholders and departments like Human Resources, University Career Services, Information Technology Services, to name a few. For me personally, the benefit of having a second leader was that we were able to divide forces to tackle different aspects of our department's goals simultaneously. This could be either conducting interviews regarding UNC student policies or troubleshooting issues regarding our event planning. Because there were 2 people specializing in particular department goals at any given time, whether policy reform or event building, we were able to do more with our team and for our fellow Tar Heels. Having another leader also allowed us to tackle more, since we were not restricted in our capacity to conduct formal meetings by 1 leader's availability, and had the benefit of 2 broad schedules that increased our work potential. Lastly, and most importantly, having an additional leader allowed for more flexibility to keep the department running, say during exam season, or when unprecedented responsibilities or circumstances happened. I remember a time, for example, before a major career event last year when a co-director fell ill. Because I was still available and knowledgeable of what needed to be done, the event was eventually a success. Similarly, I had to take a step back from leading meetings during a hectic midterm season this year, and AAPD policy work continued seamlessly thanks to co-director Ryan having more availability then. That is all I have for now. I sincerely believe that having an additional leader who can shoulder more responsibility depending on circumstances is essential for the proper functionality of our executive cabinet departments. Thus, I hope this tradition continues since it makes our student advocacy that much more feasible. Thank you, and I'm open to any and all questions.
Okay, thank you, Neil. Is there anyone else here for public comment? Becca, I'll recognize you for 2 minutes.
Great. Thank you so much, Speaker Gary. Thank you so much, Neil, for taking the time to join us. For those of you that haven't had a chance to look at this particular piece of legislation or aren't familiar with the system that was used last year, all of the cabinet departments had 2 co-directors. There was a change made in the code to mandate that there only be 1 director of every cabinet department. The executive branch, so myself, Chief of Staff Williams, and President Everett have all sponsored this particular piece of legislation to allow for co-directors to come back to lead these departments collaboratively, to use the system that was used last year and that was used successfully, at least in our opinion, and hopefully in your opinion as well. I'd like to take this time to share testimony from 2 other cabinet co-chairs from last year, Ella Feathers, who led the Environmental Affairs Department, and Taft Stevens, who co-led the Student Wellness and Safety Department. I'm going to drop the link to their full testimony in the chat so you guys can take a look at that in more detail, but I do want to use my remaining time to just highlight 2 things that they said. So Ella shared that without a co-director, running the Environmental Affairs Department would have been significantly more difficult. I don't think we would have accomplished nearly as much if only one of us were directing the department. And then Taft Stevens shared that the co-director system allowed for us to work together and not become overwhelmed within our positions, where I would work and communicate our actions with EBO and beyond, while they worked with the staff in our department. We developed our own system that worked for us, while also having enough structure to know where to go next. This model was one of my favorite parts of this administration, and in moving forward, I highly recommend using this model for its many benefits in future administrations. I really hope that you all will support this piece of legislation. It is my full-fledged belief that enacting it will make it possible for cabinet directors to do their jobs better, and also to have a support system. They just end up doing so much work, and I think that they'll be able to do a better job for themselves and for everybody if they can do it with another person. So yeah, I think I sent that Google link so y'all can read those testimonies in a little bit more detail.
Thank you, Becca. We're also going to add a copy of the link you just sent to our minutes. Is there anyone else here for public comment period? If you are, just raise your Zoom hand. Right. Okay, seeing none, we'll move into the next item of business. Oh, Treasurer Grosky, do you wish to give public comment?
I do.
All right, you have 2 minutes.
I'd just like to speak briefly in support of Cormac Lynch in his confirmation as a member of the Board of Elections. I feel qualified to speak on this issue because Cormac has served as my chief of staff in my office thus far. He's been an incredibly effective chief of staff who's really helped me a lot. I think he has an excellent mastery of administrative tasks and would be an asset to the Board of Elections and to the student government.
Right, thank you, Logan. Let's see, Christopher Williams, you're recognized for 2 minutes.
Yes, I just wanted to touch a little bit on what Vice President Siegel said, and then also former academic cabinet director Neil Sharma. As a person who was in the Van administration, working in the office of the chief of staff, I can also attest to the validity of this model of co-cabinet directors. The office of the chief of staff serves to act as sort of the backbone and that support for executive branch as a whole, and specifically cabinet. But outside of that, what we found that worked well is that directors need that person that's even closer than what the office of the chief of staff can be and provide. And that's where that cabinet co-director came into play. It allowed for nice synergy in a way that sure, at first there was a bit concerned about in terms of would there be a power struggle or something of that nature, but that wasn't the case at all. And it allowed for really, really good products that came out of it, as opposed to one person leading everything else. They had someone to bounce ideas off of before they went to their general staff members. They had someone to bounce their ideas off of when members within the office of the chief of staff were focused on putting out fires and supporting other groups within the executive branch and a part of whatever the executive branch was doing in the Van administration. So I just want to also just add that piece in addition to what everyone else said in support of this bill.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else for public comment? Seeing none, is there a motion to amend the agenda to add the adoption of the Code of Ethical Conduct and the administering of the oath of office?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you all. That'll be added to the special orders calendar.
Also, point of order, you have to have the public comment period technically.
Yes, I was just about to recognize that. Is there anyone who wishes to give public comment on the Senate adding these two agenda items? Seeing no public comment and hearing no objection, we'll consider that motion adopted by unanimous consent. Okay, we will now move into the special orders calendar. Our first item will be the adoption of the Code of Ethical Conduct. I will recognize Chair Baruch for this item.
Yeah, hey y'all, this is very similar to our last year's Code of Ethical Conduct. For those who don't know what our Code of Ethical Conduct is, it is a code created that basically if a senator is found in violation of anything on the code, we can then proceed with ethics investigations. It's modeled after just the actual Senate's Code of Ethical Conduct with a couple of changes made because of things that we saw happen last year involving senators. But yes, it's almost identical with a couple changes in references to the code and a couple word changes.
Right. Are there any questions for Chair Baruch? If there are no questions, is there a motion to either adopt or enter discussion?
I move to suspend unnecessary rules and procedures and adopt by unanimous consent.
Second.
Second.
All right, motion to suspend the rules and adopt by unanimous consent by Chair McClanahan, seconded. I've heard seconds from like 3 people, but I believe I saw Senator Vernon's unmute. If us. So with that, hearing no objection, we'll consider the Code of Ethical Conduct adopted at this time. We will now move into administering the oath. I believe there is at least one person on the call who needs the oath administered. So please just like raise, if you are that person, just like raise your hand so I can see you. Is Senator Jane on the call?
Yes, I am. Sorry, I'm just trying to figure out how to raise my hand.
No, you're all good. I just need to know that you're raising your right hand basically, and then we can administer the oath. Just pull that up very quickly. Okay, let's see. All right, so just repeat after me. I state your full name.
I, Ananya Jane,
Do affirm that I will preserve, protect, and defend.
do affirm I will, sorry, can you say that again?
Yeah, preserve, protect, and defend
Preserve, protect, and defend
the general welfare
the general welfare
of the student body
of the student body
at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill
at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill
and its Constitution
and its Constitution
and all laws enacted under its authority.
and all laws enacted under its authority.
All right, congratulations, you've been sworn in.
Thank you.
With that, we will now move into our next item of business, which is the consent calendar. At this time, is there a motion with regards to the consent calendar?
Motion to adopt.
Second.
All right, motion to adopt by Chair McClanahan, seconded by Senator Vernon. Hearing no objection, the consent calendar is adopted. With that, we'll move on to our general orders calendar. The first item being USB 105018, a bill to amend the undergraduate student code with respect to cabinet appointments. Right. see, so this was proposed by President Everett, and basically, just to kind of briefly explain, introduced by I'll explain in a second. Let's see, the Speaker Pro Tem is not present, neither is the Finance Chair. So I believe the next in the line of succession is Chair McClanahan. So I will yield the chair to Chair McClanahan at this time.
Thank you, Speaker Gary. You're recognized for presenting the bill.
Yeah, so basically there's, this is introduced by myself as a courtesy to the executive branch and the president, just because basically the president isn't constitutionally allowed to introduce legislation. Chair McClanahan and I have reviewed the codes and basically determined that the standing rules which grant the president the ability to introduce legislation, we feel that violates the separation of powers, as the Constitution doesn't grant the president authority. So just basically going forward, any legislation that the executive branch needs introduced will be considered as introduced by myself as like a neutral statement, since as the speaker, I'm not really like supposed to like have a very partisan position on legislation, with like exceptions basically. So I'll really just say very briefly, you've heard much discussion on this already. So I will yield to basically questions. I don't know.
Are there any questions for Speaker Gary? Senator Pollack, you're recognized.
Thank you. We heard a lot about people in favor of this. Do you know of anybody that in the executive branch that is against this idea?
In the executive branch, I can't really say. I haven't really discussed this much, this current bill with individuals besides the vice president, and very briefly, but I can say, I remember at least, hold on, sorry, I'm being informed, I do know of someone actually that is opposed to it. I'm being informed of that at this moment. See, I don't know if they're on the call or not. But yeah, there's like mixed opinions on this. I can't really speak to everyone in the executive branch's opinions, basically.
If there are no objections, the vice president will be recognized to ask a question. Seeing no objections, the vice president is recognized.
Am I able to respond to that question that was just raised?
If there are no objections, you may. Seeing none.
I obviously can't speak on behalf of every single member of EBO, but I can say that this particular piece of legislation was done largely by myself, Chief of Staff Williams, President Everett, and the executive manager Everson. I think that those are the four folks that have worked on it most directly. And the overall push to do this was shared with our EBO group. But again, I can't speak directly to how other folks who aren't here feel to it.
Are there any further questions for the sponsor? Seeing no questions, we will now move into discussion. Does anyone want to be recognized?
Motion to suspend all necessary rules and pass by unanimous consent.
Second.
Are there any objections? Seeing no objections, the bill passes by unanimous consent. And as we are done here, I now return the gavel to the speaker.
Thank you, Chair McClanahan. We will now move to USR 105020, a resolution to confirm a member of the Faculty Council. So let's see, Vice Presidents. This is again technically introduced by myself, but I will yield directly to the Vice President for introducing this, as that's like the custom.
Thank you, Speaker Gary. This bill is to confirm Margot Sherwin to serve for a second year as a student representative to Faculty Council. I believe Ms. Sherwin is here, at least I saw her earlier. Margot, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Okay, awesome. Margot has carried out this position dutifully. She immediately expressed interest to return to the position. I really value the fact that she could bring her knowledge from last year to this position for a second year, and I have full faith in her ability to carry out the responsibilities of this position for the 2023-2024 academic year. And Speaker Gary, if you're okay with it, I would love to give Margot an opportunity to speak a little bit more about her experience.
Yeah, I will extend speaking privileges to Margot.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. My name is Margot. Yes, so this would be my second term serving in this position. And as Vice President Siegel said, I did this all of last year and have been involved with student government since my freshman year in various capacities, including as a member of the Civic Engagement and Outreach Services Committee. All of these different activities have familiarized me with the way that undergraduate student government operates, and have also helped me and equipped me with leadership skills for taking on this position for another term. I've also been able to practice taking student concerns to these meetings, as well as letting students know what things are being prioritized in these agendas that are set by the faculty. So I would love the opportunity to do that again, as I found it very interesting. And yeah.
Thank you, Margot. Is there anyone who wishes to ask any questions of the nominee?
Motion to suspend the rules and pass by unanimous consent.
Second.
All right, the motion is to suspend the rules and adopt by unanimous consent by Chair McClanahan, seconded by Senator Vernon. Is there any objection to that motion? Hearing no objection, we'll consider USR 105020 adopted by unanimous consent. I will now again yield the chair to Senator McClanahan during the consideration of USR 105021, as this resolution concerns myself. Chair McClanahan, you have the chair.
All right, sponsor is technically recognized, but I assume you will be yielding directly to the Vice President if there is no objection.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, fantastic. So this piece of legislation is to confirm one Andrew Gary for a second term on the Committee of Student Conduct. Speaker Gary, Mr. Gary has done a wonderful job serving on this committee for the past year, immediately expressed interest to returning to his position and serving again. I have full faith in Andrew Gary's ability to carry out the responsibilities of this role. I know that he has a lot of ideas as to what he wants to get done in a second year. And I fully endorse his candidacy for returning to this position, and I hope that you all do as well. And I would love to hear a little bit more from Andrew Gary about his goals for this position and overall thoughts and experience.
Thank you, Becca. And I'll just briefly say the Committee on Student Conduct didn't meet much last year, we mainly due to the fact that we're still searching for a permanent person to chair that committee. But I'll say in just our couple of meetings, we've had some really amazing discussions on how the honor system should work, and like honestly changes that we are going to be pursuing to the instrument over the next year that I would love to still be a part of. I would like to see a lot of changes to how the instrument is written, as like honestly it wasn't really revised much once the student government was split, and this has caused a lot of confusion, at least when I was R&J chair. Like we really didn't know how to handle the confirmation of the honor system outreach coordinator, for example, as like the instrument hasn't really been updated to reflect how our student government works. And honestly, I've really come to enjoy working with our counterparts in the honor system. Like last year, I had a great working relationship with the USAG Vanessa, and I'm hoping to have that same relationship with our new student attorney general and honor court chair over this next year, and would really appreciate having a second term on the Committee on Student Conduct. So I'll yield the floor at that point to any questions.
Are there any questions for Andrew Gary? Seeing none, are there any points, motions, or discussion on the floor at this time?
Motion to suspend all necessary rules and pass by unanimous consent.
Second.
If there's no objection, the motion carries by unanimous consent. USR 105021 has passed by unanimous consent. I now return the gavel to the speaker.
Thank you, Chair McClanahan, again for that. We'll now move on to our next item on the agenda, USR 105023, a resolution to confirm a member of the Board of Elections. I will again yield to the Vice President.
Thank you, Speaker Gary. The selection committee for the Board of Elections was incredibly impressed with Cormac Lynch's application. We feel confident that Cormac will do a wonderful job as a member of the Board of Elections and will be able to faithfully and effectively carry out all of the responsibilities. The entire committee recommended him. The president also furthered this nomination. And I sincerely hope that you all support Cormac Lynch's application to serve on the Board of Elections. And with that, if Cormac can speak a little bit more to his experience and thoughts on the position, that would be wonderful.
Hello all, this is my second visit to this undergraduate senate. I feel incredibly honored to be nominated for this position. As Logan has said, and as the Vice President said, I have done a lot of administrative work within the Treasury, and I feel that these will be well deployed in the Board of Elections. Carrying out elections are a very important part of our student government, and making sure that they're fair and that every would-be candidate is well informed on the rules is very important. I think the board deserves a lot of credit for educating would-be candidates on their role. I don't have much to say further, and I just hope to work with you folks in the future. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Cormac Lynch?
Motion to suspend the rules and pass by unanimous consent.
Second.
Right. Motion to suspend the rules and adopt by unanimous consent from Chair McClanahan, seconded by Senator Forbes. Is there any objection to that motion? Okay, hearing no objection, that we will adopt this resolution by unanimous consent. Cormac, just for your knowledge, this is because your appointment is to the Board of Elections, you'll have to go before the JGC. I'm sure Vice President Siegel has briefed you all on that. So as soon as we know when the next JGC meeting is, we'll make sure you're aware of that so you can be in attendance. But congratulations on finishing this part of the process. So with that, we'll go to our next resolution, USR 105024, a resolution to confirm member of the Student Supreme Court. So I'll again yield to the Vice President.
Thank you, Speaker Gary. Nicole Belcher is a fantastic candidate for the Undergraduate Student Supreme Court. She has been beyond the opinion of the selection committee, just incredibly diligent in expressing her desire to serve on the court, and has done just a fantastic job of continuing to get in touch. The selection committee was incredibly impressed by her application and felt confident in recommending her to the president. And the president felt very confident in nominating her as one of his lifetime appointments to the court. So he's also excited about what Nicole is going to be able to do. I could not recommend her more strongly to you all, and I sincerely hope that you will confirm her to serve on the court for the remainder of her time at UNC. And with that, I would like to extend to Nicole to speak a little bit more about her experience and her understanding of the role.
Thank you, Vice President Siegel. It's a fantastic honor to be before you today. I served as the parliamentarian of the 104th Senate, and I served 2 terms as an Associate Justice of North Carolina's YMCA Youth in Government. So I've had years of experience issuing orders and opinions. Thus, I'm exceedingly confident that I'm prepared to lead with fluid knowledge of all of the relevant governing documents and a proficient understanding of legal works and opinions. I have a well-honed understanding of the undergraduate code, the graduate code, joint code, the Supreme Court bylaws, the Constitution, and the reporter. And practically with my confirmation, the Student Supreme Court will reach its quorum of 3 justices, and I'll begin working to amend our bylaws to accommodate for Board of Elections and viewpoint neutrality cases that we can expect in the coming year. Ultimately, I'm incredibly eager to contribute to a more diverse and accessible Student Supreme Court, and would be honored to receive this Senate's support tonight.
All right, are there any questions for Nicole Belcher?
Motion to suspend the rules and adopt by unanimous consent.
Second.
All right, there's the motion to suspend the rules and adopt by unanimous consent by Chair McClanahan, seconded by Senator Guskowitz. Hearing no objection, we'll consider this resolution adopted. Congratulations, Nicole. Just like with Cormac, you'll have to go before JGC, but as soon as we hear about when that's going to be scheduled, I'm sure the Vice President will take care of making sure you're there. So with that, we'll move on to our next item on the agenda, USR 105026, a resolution calling for Election Day to be made a university holiday. We will turn it over to Senator Alexander for that.
Oh, briefly, point of order. It should say general orders, not simple resolutions.
Yeah, the legislative histories will get updated after the meeting. I'm currently traveling, so I haven't had time to do all that.
Thank you. So yeah, just the resolution, you go off if you read it. It's very self-explanatory, but essentially, as we all know, election day, there's always classes held on election day, and it can act as a barrier to a lot of students when they want to vote. And we've seen this year, for example, we saw some record turnout at some of the polling stations. Like I went to the Stone Center, for example, there's a long line. So for people who have classes, they may find that to be a barrier, especially because we don't have many polling stations on campus. Again, just having the fact that their classes and homework can really be a barrier to students who want to vote and participate in our democracy. And since I assume everyone in this meeting is in some form a member of student government, you're all familiar with the importance of civic engagement and advocacy, representation and whatnot. So I think we can all agree that this is an important issue, and just calling on the university to do this is a very important measure. And I want to work in the coming days with the university through my position at the commission to really get the university hear out of the student body on this issue. So if there are any questions, I am happy to discuss this resolution.
Are there any questions for Senator Alexander?
Motion to suspend the rules and adopt by unanimous consent.
Is there a second?
Second.
The motion to suspend the rules by Chairman McClanahan. I heard second from Senator Vernon, I believe. Hearing no objection, we will consider this resolution adopted by unanimous consent. Move on to our next item, USR 105027, a resolution calling on the university to establish an Asian American Studies major and minor. Okay, we will turn this again to Senator Alexander.
Thank you again. So again, I think some people may be familiar with the growing movement to push for an Asian American Studies major on campus. But if you're not familiar, basically, people have recognized that a lot of major premier universities, like notably Berkeley, for example, Vanderbilt, Georgetown, universities like that are comparable to UNC, all have established Asian American Studies programs, but not Carolina for some reason. And we want to ensure that all like minority groups are heard and represented in academia, and this is the perfect way to do so. And as a South Asian American, I can speak to the importance of this. And we've seen Asian hate throughout the pandemic, for example, and just being able to educate people and allow them to have the opportunity to major in this or have a minor in it could be a really important way to get further Asian representation in academia. And I hope, again, it's not a controversial issue. It really won't detract from other programs on campus, especially the university established a Carolina Asian American Center, but they haven't got a major minor for some reason. So we want to, again, make them take the next step and establish that. And I hope to once more use my position on the commission to push for the university to adopt this sort of major and minor. So I'm happy to answer any questions about it. And yeah, thank you.
All right, are there any questions for Senator Alexander? Senator Pollack, you're recognized.
I do support this. My only question is, do we have the kind of faculty support for this? Because they're the ones that need to create the syllabus for the courses in this major or minor. And do you kind of address that within this letter?
To my understanding, we have the support of the Asian American Center and the Carolina Asia Center. I have not heard from the full faculty, and that is something that I want to work on. But there's a petition circulating for this established by a different advocacy group, and they have a number of faculty that signed on to it from a variety of departments. So I would hope that it represents them. And I see there's a number of hands being raised.
Motion to grant speaking rights to Christopher Williams, Luke Grodzki, and Rebecca Siegel by unanimous consent.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Do I hear any objection? All right, hearing no objection, let's see. Christopher Williams, I saw your hand raised first, so.
Yes, if I could, I just wanted to speak a little bit about to the question on whether there's that faculty support. One thing that
if we could hold like speeches till after we're done with Q&A, that would be great.
Okay, that's perfect.
All right, so let's see.
Well, I can't directly answer the question, or
no, the question wasn't directed to you.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Can I yield my time to him to answer it, or?
Yeah, you can do that.
Okay, I yield my time to Christopher Williams to answer the question.
Yeah, now you can.
So what I will say, this is a heavy priority for the administration, and especially a big push for Chancellor Guskowitz. If President Everett were here, he would speak to that as well. But outside of that, I work in the Office of the Vice Provost for Global Affairs. So specifically with the Chief Diversity Officer, Ambassador Stevenson, and this is a heavy push over the next year. It was a heavy push when she started her tenure in her position, and all of the work that we've done in programming in the Office of the Vice Provost for Global Affairs has been lobbying for this. Whenever we have opportunities for guest speakers to go before the Board of Trustees, I've been doing work on that end to sort of push that as well. So I can say that within UNC Global and the Office of the Vice President for Global Affairs, there is a heavy push to make this happen, along with the Chancellor's support, and it's a priority for Student Body President Everett, especially after meeting with Chancellor Guskowitz.
Thank you. Let's see, Logan, I saw your hand up next.
Yeah, so don't take this these are just some advisory, are you aware questions. First, are you aware that the process, because you are asking for a major, the process for approval of that would involve the Board of Governors? That's more just that is a question, I'll say, intended with regard to the recipients list.
Yes, absolutely. I am aware. For me, just the one thing is I've been focusing primarily on the university level first, because it's hard to move even beyond that without the university approving it. But the recipients list does include the president of the system, so that is one thing to keep in mind. And again, the other is, first, I want university support. Like, I'm trying to use my position to work with the provost and the dean of college of arts and sciences to get the university support. But I know it's a long process, and we will have to work step by step from the university level to the Board of Governors.
Okay, and then just as a follow-up, and again, this is only for advisory purposes, are you aware that this was presented to the provost during the Provost Advisory Committee meeting in, I think, April, and the may have been May, and the provost did express reservation and skepticism towards the proposal?
I have not, because I've been trying to work with the group that I believe that met with them, the Students for Asian American Studies at UNC. But that is why I do want to renew these talks with the provost and try to see why there's that skepticism in the first place. I believe that it should not just be given up just because of that one meeting. So if that answers your questions.
All right, let's see. Becca, I saw your hand up next.
Thank you, Speaker Garrett. Can you guys hear me? I'm using my AirPods.
Yeah, you're good.
Is it okay? Good. I'm not sure how to word this in the same way that Treasurer Grodzki was, so bear with me. Senator Alexander, like, I super support this push, but I just wanted to ask if you, I guess, are aware that this information has also been presented to the Dean of Arts and Sciences, and that he has met with the student group several times and is working with them right now. Is that, like, are those conversations that you're aware of?
I am, yes. That is one bar that I read. The commission is, I try to reach out with that group, and we've had some issues with communicating with them, but I am aware that talks have been occurring. My point is I want the student government to be involved in these talks, because I believe that there's more to be done, and they'd be more likely to listen if there are more stakeholders involved.
Okay, gotcha. If I want to do something similar to what Chief of Staff Williams did, where he just spoke freely, do I need special speaking privileges to do that?
I'm happy
Senator
to
Alexander
time.
could yield. That would be the
Yeah,
easiest.
I yield my time to Rebecca Siegel.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So I chair, in my capacity as Vice President, I chair both the Provost Advisory Committee and the Deans of Arts and Sciences Advisory Committee, and we're still having those conversations. And then in your position as a commissioner, you'll be on those committees moving forward. So you'll be like a part of those conversations. I think in the same vein as to what Logan said, I would just caution against us imposing this on faculty and on the provost when the provost has sort of expressed a little bit of hesitancy, but also knows that there is a student push. I don't know if you've spoken directly with the student group, but the student group has also collected a list of faculty members who are in support of this of establishing this program? Have you like looked at those materials and stuff, like the
Yes,
list of faculty?
I'm
Okay.
familiar with the petition.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so I think that petition and getting in touch with those faculty members would be great. I want you to know that like student government is continuing to have those conversations with the provost and the dean of the college. So I'm like more than happy to be your point person regarding getting involved with those committees. And I think the code or just general practice mandates that you're a part of them. So you will be like in our first meeting that we have with them in August or September.
Yeah, for sure. I think the point more so of this was just to show that the Senate was behind the measure, and that I guess I do want to use these talks through my position, but I understand where the reservations are coming from.
Let's see, thank you. Let's see, Senator Vernon.
Yeah, thank you so much for, can you hear me right?
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, I just want to echo some of the previous speaker sentiments in that we have had these discussions very explicitly with the provost and the dean, and both are semi on board. However, I feel as someone who has been in that room for the past year, similar to Vice President Siegel, that this
Senator
big,
Vernon,
you know, fairly aggressive but good.
We're still in queue.
I think I just was saying, are you aware? Yes. Are you aware that this may be seen as over-aggressive and pushy and potentially dissuade the already hesitant?
I personally do not believe it may be too aggressive per se. I do believe that I mean, happy to amend the resolution if that is how it's coming off to other stakeholders that were involved in the discussions. But just from my knowledge as I wrote the thing, I just believe that the point was more so just to educate the various groups on it. But since now we know about these discussions and how far they've been, I think that just one issue I've had with that group that is working with them, that I just haven't been able to communicate with them. But I'm happy to work with anyone who has been in those talks to amend the resolution as needed, if that is what you guys are pushing for.
Okay, are there any other questions? If there are no questions, is there a motion to enter discussion or something else?
Point of order, that happens automatically.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I forgot we changed that. So let's see, at this time, if there are no motions, we'll go into discussion.
If I may add one thing about that point of order, you only actually make that motion if you're trying to terminate a Q&A period, not just to end it because we're done. So that's all.
Thank you for clarifying that. All right, let's see. Treasurer Gretzky, I believe you still have speaking privileges since it was like less than 5 minutes.
Isn't that neat? Yeah, so I'd just like to kind of, and again, drawing on my experience from the Provost Advisory Committee, what the Provost expressed to us was a few things. I think the largest reservation from the academic leadership of the university here is that they don't necessarily want to invest a lot of funds into a major which doesn't have proven buy-in. So the process, like majors and minors are actually apparently like very different processes. So majors require, I think, a lot more input, a lot more review, a much more rigorous approval process. So whereas a minor is not nearly so rigorous, and it can be done totally internal to our campus and B with much less review. So what he expressed was that, as has been done with other newly created majors, he would, like, before he would consider a major, he'd want to see a minor test the waters for how much interest there is, because he doesn't want to create a major that's not going to have any subscribers. So, and again, this is, I'm not going to recommend anything to the Senate here. I'm just trying to give some background on how people at the university think about this. Yeah. And I'll also say, be very careful about trying to ask, like, make demands that leaders at the university aren't going to find reasonable or amenable or friendly, I should say. So just some things to think about here. I personally think an Asian American Studies program would be neat. I don't know much about the background on it, I'll be very honest, but I can represent what's been said in meetings with the provost.
Great, thank you, Treasurer Grodzki. Senator Vernon, I saw your hand up next.
Yeah, at this time, I'd like to motion to postpone until the next Senate meeting.
There is a motion to postpone to our next meeting. Is there a second on the motion to postpone until the next meeting?
Second.
All right, I heard second from Senator Alexander, I believe. Let's see. So is there any objection to postponing until the next meeting?
Senator Alexander seconded, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I believe I heard Senators Alexander and Pollock second. All right, hearing no objection, I will consider this item postponed by unanimous consent to our next meeting, which will be in June. All right. With that exhausts our general orders calendar.
Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
I just noticed that on our consent calendar, we forgot to include USR 105-002. At this time, I'm going to move to suspend the rules and add USR 105-002 to the consent calendar and consider it as having been adopted with the motion to adopt the consent calendar.
All right. Is there a motion to suspend the rules to do all the things the chair Chair McClanahan stated?
That was what I moved to do.
Yeah. Is there a second?
Point of information, what is the bill that's about to be added?
USR 105-002 was a slate of amendments to the standing rules that was passed in R&J. That's meeting earlier this month, I believe. It was my error to forgetting to include it on the agenda.
And if the Senate would like to hear it, the only substantive change it does, and this isn't really a change, is that it clarifies certain things Robert's rules say aren't typically included in the minutes do go into the minutes. The rest of it is very minor technical tweaks that just fix some wording.
Can the chair put a link in the chat?
Yes, there we go. And that is the link to it.
Okay, so there is currently still a motion on the floor. Is there a second to this motion?
Second.
Okay, motion was seconded by Senator Vernon. Is there an objection to this motion? Okay, hearing no objection, the motion is adopted. So USR 105-002 is adopted as part of the consent calendar. Sorry for
there were no public comment requests, right, too?
No, there were none.
Yep.
Sorry for forgetting to include that. As I said, I've been traveling the past week and a half.
No worries.
Yeah, I'll be back home for next week. Okay, with that, we have now exhausted our business agenda. We are now in line for notices and announcements. I have a few announcements. So just as a reminder, our next meeting will not be until June. It is going to be on the third Tuesday of that month, which is June 20th at 7:30 on Zoom. If you have any legislation you would like considered at that meeting, I have adopted a policy for this. It is like this policy is that you need to submit legislation to me by the Friday before Senate meeting at 5 p.m. if you want it heard. So if you would like legislation heard at our meeting on June 20th, you will need to send it to me by June 16th at 5 p.m. Other kind of brief announcements. If you have not been added to the Senate Drive and need access to that, send me your Gmail address. I'll double check the Google form that Chair Baruch sent out to make sure everyone got added. But if you still don't have access, just send me your Gmail address. I believe that's all the announcements I have. So if there are any other notices or announcements, just kind of raise your hand. Treasurer Grodzki.
Yeah, so thanks to the assistance of Senator Forbes, I have updated the treasurer's test to reflect amendments made under the FRRA. So treasurer's test is fully updated. I believe it was sent out to you all. The ethics chair and speaker and all other such persons should have access to that for internal Senate enforcement purposes.
Thank you, Chair McClanahan.
I said this in my report, but I'll say this again. If you have not completed the student code test, please go ahead and pass that test. Since we're past the deadline, you need to pass it with a 90% margin, no matter what committee you were on, and just get this done by 6 weeks from Monday, and you will be all right. That's all.
All right, let's see. And Chief of Staff Williams.
Motion carries,
Yes,
right?
just
Yeah, you're good, Chief of Staff.
Okay. Yes, just to say once again, applications are open for executive branch. If you have any friends who are interested, please spread it far and wide, put it in the listservs that you're a part of. Anyone that you know who could be interested, I think has a valuable voice that they can offer. Please tell them to apply for senior staff or cabinet, so that we can get a plethora of applications to make one of the best senior staff and cabinet opportunities possible. That's all. Thank you.
All right, and I will just sort of issue a reminder, make sure you take your treasurer's test. I think the due date for that is coming up early next week. If you're on finance committee, you need at least a 90 to pass. If you're not on finance committee, you need at least an 80 to pass. Please do that as soon as you can. All right, with that, unless there are no other announcements, is there a motion to adjourn?
I motion to
So
adjourn.
moved.
So moved.
Motion-
Second.
Motion to adjourn by Senator Pollock, seconded by Senator Vernon. At this time, the Senate stands adjourned at 9 p.m. Thank you all for coming.